All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking about real music in real time for a few real people out there just like you and just like me. All right, so I was featuring this album yesterday, talking about different record labels. Here is Overland and their album Six. This is Steve Overland and a bunch of really talented musicians putting out some really excellent music. Go check it out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. This is courtesy of our friends over at Escape Music, where you can escape the drudgery of hearing the same music over and over again. Speaking of the same old music, Neil Young is in the news. This is a great story, folks. 2 years after he pulled all his music from Spotify, 2 years. So he lasted 2 years. Neil Young has announced he's putting his music back on the streaming service, although he's not necessarily happy about it. Oh, man. Anyway, Spotify, the number one streamer of low res. Now, this is Neil Young talking here. Spotify, the number one streamer of low res music in the world, where you get less quality than we made, will now be home of my music again. Okay, so let's stop here and analyze this statement. So he's complaining now about the low resolution, the lack of quality in digital music streams. Yes, 100% agree with you, old Neil. So why are you putting your music back on there? Be the first question. So my decision comes as music services Apple and Amazon have started serving the same disinformation podcast features I had opposed at Spotify. All right, so let that sink in. So there's a podcast that really irritates Neil Young. It's the number one podcast in the world, and it's not even close as far as streams on this particular podcast. Of course, I'm talking about the great Joe Rogan. Joe, if you ever have, if you have nothing to do and you want to have me on your show, imagine me with Joe Rogan. I would probably be a little nervous, but I would have a good time, I think. I think I'd be able to handle it. Joe, anytime, brother, you want to have me on, we could talk about Neil Young putting his music back on. I think that would be a great discussion. So Young demanded his music be pulled from Spotify back in January of 2022. I know I covered this at the time, accusing the service of spreading fake information about the thing and that wonderful, safe, and effective product, because Joe Rogan had some questions. Because you weren't, look, Rogan asks questions whether he even agrees with the answers or not. He has the courage to ask the question, whereas the media walked in lockstep. It irritated me to no end to just, I'm changing stations. I'm looking for a different perspective. Yeah, it's safe and effective. Stay indoors. Don't get any sunlight. Make sure you cower in a corner. Don't travel anywhere. Don't go out and exercise. My favorite, don't go to church. That was like my all-time favorite. Yeah, we're shutting the churches down. Sorry, no need to worship anymore. So this relationship you have with God, you may think it's important, but we think, you're just doing some make-believe thing, worshiping some make-believe God. So, hey, we have no explanation, though, as to why the universe is here or why we're even here or why anything even exists at all. So don't go to church. Don't strengthen your faith. I love that. That was like my favorite one of all of them. So he's mad because apparently Amazon and Apple are now putting out the same disinformation podcast features. They're features. Yes, hey, Alex, I will take disinformation podcasts for 1,000 every single time. You know what? here's a guy, right? And his band originally, CSN, CSNY, he was the Y in CSNY. Weren't they big free speech advocates in the late 60s and into the early 70s? Didn't they want their message, which was, hey, Vietnam, not a good idea. Hey, violence in certain places, college campuses, and the police are getting a little too rough and tumble with protesters. They wrote songs about this stuff, songs that used to get played on the radio, Neil. They don't get played on the radio anymore. So obviously you need to put your stuff on Spotify so people can go and listen to it again. The irony, right? So we can hear the song Ohio again. But it's weird because now all the stuff that these guys were for, they're against for some reason. They're against people getting information. This is bizarre. And look, you don't have to agree with the information. Well, Dave, it's disinformation. It's No, who's deciding? Who are the deciders? It's been debunked. By who? By big corporations or people who have vested interests in these products that they're pushing upon everyone? You can't go, I don't know, 5 minutes into a show without hearing some kind of a product, a medical product that's supposed to help you, but yet it has 17 side effects. And one of them might be death. It may cause death in certain adults. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a risk I'm going to go take so I can lower my cholesterol or whatever it is that they're trying to push on everybody. In the old days, they might suggest, you're eating too many cheeseburgers, or maybe you should lay off the carbohydrates. But no. And by the way, and these are the people that Neil Young inadvertently supports with his rhetoric here. Because if you're not allowed to challenge these big corporations on what they're doing to the population, sorry, I know this sounds very conspiratorial. They're not doing anything. No, there are documentaries all the time about what they put in the food. People ignore it. And they just keep eating McDonald's. Hey, these cheeseburgers are better here than anywhere else. And they've put like 14 mystery ingredients in there. Things that you can't pronounce, things that aren't actually food. It's not considered food, but yet it's being served every single day. And by the way, it's your right. If you want to eat this stuff, I'm not opposed to that. I'm not going to tell you what to eat. Freedom kind of cuts both ways. You have freedom to do stupid stuff. You've also got freedom to listen to something that is an opposing viewpoint. Neil Young, you used to stand for this stuff. This is weird to me. This is just bizarre. So I'm going to put my songs back on there because his rationale is, well, Amazon, they're putting the same stuff out. Apple Music, they're doing it too. So I might as well just put my music back on Spotify. The low resolution, and I'm going to smack them as I do it. The low resolution platform. Neil, this is it. The music industry has imploded, right? So yeah, this is the only place people are going to go and listen to your music. I'm glad you figured that out. Anyway, does he say anything else here that's relevant? Neil said he can't leave Apple and Amazon because my music would have very little streaming outlet to music lovers at all. Agreed, because radio is so bad. And quite honestly, I can only take Neil Young's voice in small dosages. So, I mean, look, back in the day, yeah, there are some great Neil Young songs, no question about it. And during the early days in his career, he was outspoken against, the people who are now controlling everything. He was outspoken against all the people that have formed these music monopolies. Those types of people, those people actually didn't exist. Basically, they were record labels in those days, but they were far more, judicious in the way that they did things compared to what they're doing now. So, yeah. So he's basically saying they will all now be there for you, except for the full sound that we, meaning he and his band and his producers, the full sound that we created. He also expressed his hope Spotify would improve their sound quality so people will be able to hear and feel all the music as we made it. All right. So he's said this like 20 times here, maybe not that many times, but he's expressed that he doesn't like the sound quality of Spotify. Hey, Neil, there's a solution to that. Why don't you start to complain about how bad radio is these days? Because those FM radio stations that helped you become a megastar, they've all but just changed into monolithic, corporate, boring, unimaginative places where, your music gets focus tested into oblivion. So even though I'm not the biggest Neil Young fan, I do think that Neil Young should get some airplay. There are so many bands and so many different people that used to get played that they've been culled down to like a couple of songs. And then what have they been replaced with? Nothing. So it's a lot of repetition and it's a lot of radio boredom. And, the people that follow me, they feel the exact same way. So anyway, congratulations, Neil Young. You got your music back on Spotify. And Joe Rogan, man, you're just killing it out there. Keep doing what you're doing. If Joe ever wants to have me on his show, I'd be more than happy. A little nervous. I mean, I might have to get in the studio with Joe, and he does some prep before. I might have to partake in his preparation in order to get through it. But hey, why not, right? Anyway, here is Overland and their album 6. This is really good stuff, well produced, great sound quality, unlike Spotify. Funny how all of a sudden we learn about how bad Spotify is when it comes to sound quality from a guy who is more concerned about these disinformation podcasts. Okay, all right. Neil, I hate to tell you, brother, there are more of us than there are of you these days. We want our free speech back. We want our country back. We want to be able to say what we want to say when we want to say it. And even if the sound quality sucks, guess what? That's okay, because at least we can still hear what we need to hear. God bless everyone. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.